At the most recent public meeting that I went to, I was accosted right outside of the meeting because somebody had a differing opinion than me. They said nasty things to me and about me. That is what our city officials, that is what our county officials regularly run into from people. There were 3 points that were brought up at that moment. One was homelessness. One was commissioners getting benefits for being commissioners. And another one was outright thievery by a commissioner. The first thing, homelessness is a very, very complicated issue. And there are a lot of people, professional people, people smarter than I, working on that issue. Number two, it is ludicrous, the accusation that this individual was making about a city commissioner directly benefiting from the work of the city and getting special privileges by the work of the city. There are literally hundreds of residents that were benefiting from that work, not just a single individual. And it would be no different than if the city denied another resident what needed to happen along a street simply for no reason at all. They did not fix streets or fix water lines in order to directly benefit a commissioner, though that could be said. And number three, outright thievery by a commissioner. I did check into what was stated, and again, what happened was there was about 10% of truth or accuracy that then blew up into 90% of accusation. That does nothing but stop the momentum of our elected officials in trying to get positive things done in our community. And first of all, I love that individual who accosted me. I have no problem with that. I know the individual, and I do love that individual. I do disagree with that individual, with how they approach certain topics and how they approach those who we have elected in order to represent us. Because I do not think that it is constructive. I think it is destructive to us furthering the mission of having a better community. And I want to encourage all of us to encourage those people that we have elected, or those people who are volunteering in front of us, who are doing the best jobs that they can in order to try to represent us and get equitable change for the better of all within our community. We, as people sitting on the sidelines, need to be able to encourage those who are on our team that are out there truly trying to do the best they can to make this community the best that it can be. And with that, I have a special guest today. I am so happy to introduce you to. He's a gentleman who I respect, who I trust, and his opinions really hold weight in my realm. And we will come right back here to the new Veterans Woodland Park with that interview. What a beautiful day it is to be in our community, and I am so happy to have with me as a guest David Henry, resident and pastor in Ward 3, which of course upcoming, the City Commission will appoint the new Ward 3 commissioner from 5 qualified applicants that were turned in last month to the city. And it's an exciting time because Ward 3 is going to have new representation, and we get to talk with David today about some of the expectations from within the ward, and exciting to know that the first ward elections will be coming up just 6 months from now. So this appointment will be for relatively short time until the people get to go to the voter box and vote in their own ward representations. And that's one of the reasons why I asked David Henry to be with me, is because I trust David Henry. I know David Henry. We've walked in the same circles for many, many years. And, you know, I have to say, your wife is one of my wife's favorite people.
Yeah.
So David, you've been in the Ward 3 a long time. Talk to us a little bit about your experience as a Ward resident and as a pastor or a business there in Ward 3.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Daniel, for letting me speak with you on this subject. You didn't say this, but I think I need to, just for clarification, I'm not one of the 5 that's going to be in that
Correct.
pool.
Yes.
So just for clarification. But I've lived in Ward 3 for, more than 12 years. And so I've seen a lot of things that happen, has not happened. And we've had several representatives since I was here, but and I'd love to talk about some of those issues that I've seen and some that I would like to see happen in Ward 3. Ward 3 is one of the more, I would say, deprived economically and also maybe even socially in Shawnee. And I hope in moving forward that whoever the representative becomes, that we will see even more involvement with the citizens, and in a manner, when I say involvement, just really being accessible to have conversations with the residents in Ward 3 to hear what Ward 3 residents see as priorities for that community in which we live. And so that's, I'm hoping, would be one of the things that we would see in whoever the one of those 5 representatives might be.
Well, in this forum, that was what excited me when we ran into each other at the meeting in which we ran into each other and had a short conversation, was you have some ideas with your years of residence there, and you have dug in as deep as anybody that I know within the ward itself. What are some of those things that you have learned over the years, David, and what do you think some of those things are that Ward 3 residents would like to see from their representation?
Okay, and I will mention maybe about 3 or 4 things that I see that I think should be part of the agenda for whoever represents Ward 3. And these may not be limited to Ward 3, but we're addressing Ward 3 specifically.
Sure.
And one of those things that I would love that the person would be a strong advocate for is the economic development in the Ward 3 area. Now, Main Street, which is, I think, should be the heartbeat of the local businesses in Shawnee, really needs a lot of work and representation in terms of just economic development. Businesses that are already there, ones that are struggling to get on their feet and so on, is that there will be a strong advocate who would see Main Street and Ward 3, especially the south side of Shawnee, a priority when it comes to economic development. I do not believe that we should ignore the southern section of our city and focus all of our attention to the north section or any one section. And so economic development is one of the things that I see, and not just in terms of business. I mean, we have Gordon Cooper, we have Oklahoma Baptist University and other places that are training people for professional career. So we don't just need businesses, but we need opportunities for these people so they're not always just leaving to find job elsewhere. So that's one, economic development, and I would say beautification in the area also. Recently, the city put a sign right off the exit coming in off 177 into the Shawnee through the Ward 3 area, and that's great, but there needs to be a whole lot more, and not just the cosmetic beautification. We need to do a lot more with, we do have a program called Love Your Block that's doing some beautification, but it needs to run a lot deeper than that with long-term strategic plan of how we're going to beautify the whole corridor entering into the community. So economic development, beautification, everyone is always concerned about safety and security. That has to be a priority also, is that whoever our advocate becomes need to speak with the residents and hear what our concerns and questions are with regards to safety and security in that area. And the one more thing that I would add, which is more pertains to the candidate, whoever he or she might be, is I would love to see someone who is a good team player. You know, the old politics of just playing with my team and I'm running against this person and telling me everything that's wrong with the other person. I'm not interested in the other person. I'm interested in you. I want to hear what you're going to advocate for. What's your agenda? What can I expect from you? And just telling me everything that's wrong with everybody else doesn't really help me in terms of what we're going to do in our community. So those are about 4 or 5 things that I think a good candidate would do well to include in their list. So
safety and security,
beautification,
team player,
being a team player,
and economic development
economic
in the
development. And the first one I mentioned also was accessibility. Come and have conversation forum, you know, with the people. And we live in an information age. Have an email list that you send to your constituents. So just really being accessible in communicating and getting feedback. So those 5.
Yeah, and we can actually help with that accessibility. We're set up to do that. We'd love to do that,
absolutely.
whether it be email, video, whatever.
That would be great.
We love to hear what you're sharing, because I think those are foundationally great for no matter what ward.
It could work in all 6 wards, really.
Yeah, and so let's talk about economic development. And right now, downtown, if I understand what you say, you feel that is a prime place for Ward 3 to be able to have an advantage coming through economic development. Would that be correct?
Sure,
and right now we're struggling as a community. That, and teamed with perhaps safety and security, though I've never been accosted by a homeless person in our community. Some have. I never have, especially along Main Street. They seem friendly, actually, when I'm around them. But safety and security, many would view in that area as a big problem. How do you see that, or do you have any opinions on how that's going to play out or should play out, David, about the homeless issue, which is top of many lists right now, and safety and security in the downtown area, because that definitely currently is hindering economic development?
Yeah, well, I'm probably the only person in Shawnee that really doesn't have an opinion about the homeless.
Good.
Do you believe me?
No, honestly, yes, I believe you.
No, but let me tell you, I do share, because, you know, I run a business in the middle of where the homeless people camp on the south side, you know, of town. And I haven't really had any problems with them any more than anybody else. With the homeless. I've never felt threatened, you know, so it's not really a problem for me personally. But I know in many instances, sometimes it's not just the problem that people are concerned about, it's also the perception that is important. So even though the homeless may not necessarily create any kind of threat beyond what's normally expected, even without homeless, just the perception is a problem. And so, yes, a lot needs to be done. And I think the city over the last 2 years in particular has been making some extra effort to address the homeless situation. But the homeless situation is something that it's not just a problem, because when you have a problem, you need a solution to fix it. It's also a predicament. And a predicament is you just have a bad situation on your hand, you know. So we have to deal with that. I think there are many solutions to that problem. I don't know if we'll have time to outline those, and I don't want to.
But I love what you said. It's not necessarily a problem, it's a predicament, but then also a part of the problem is really perception of what's going on. I've never heard it addressed that way, David.
It is a big part of the perception is worse than the problem itself. And then you have a lot of people that are saying a lot of things that creates a lot of confusion around the issue. So it gets real complicated, but I think the way to address the situation is a very simple one, because one of the things that I keep in my mind is that we're not the only one that's dealing with this issue, and there are many communities in this country that has actually solved that predicament that we're dealing with. And so what can we learn from them? And I don't necessarily want to say publicly what my opinion is with regards to why it's not going away.
So let's get back to
it's not going to go away.
Let's get back to the sitting commissioner, soon to be sitting commissioner in Ward 3. What I would hear from what you just described on those issues is you want them to be a team player and to understand what's happened before, what they might enter in thinking they can do or accomplish, but then actually being able to play as a team player, because you don't know what you don't know until you know what you don't know.
Yeah, and let me identify the other team members. When I say team player, I think a sitting commissioner needs to be in a good working partnership with everyone on the commission, whether they're on your political side or not. Because once you get in that commission, you become a team that's working to address issues in our community. But another group that the individual and collective commissioner need to play with are the nonprofit. You can't be a good leader representative and not have the right relationship and attitude towards the churches, the for-profit, the businesses, the nonprofit, and I think those would be the main ones that I would say.
Okay.
Because those are the entities that can help address issues and problems that we have. Because all of our problems are not just economic in terms of for-profit businesses and taxation and so on. Some of it is social. And so we need the nonprofit in what they do. Some of it is spiritual, and we need the churches. So all of us have to come together as a community, and that's the team. That's our team. Mm-hmm. And if you get on as a leader in this community, no matter commissioner or not, but as a commissioner, you need to be a good team player with all these different groups. I'm not saying you have to agree with them,
right,
but we can play together as a team. I don't have to agree with your philosophy and anything to play with you as a team and win.
Right.
And that's the same thing I'm talking about, just really being that kind of team player.
Yeah, and that goes to the point of how you approach people with your philosophy of what you think needs to be done or doesn't need to be done. You have to realize that it's beyond you.
Yeah.
And then, as a team player as well, you have to remember there are many players on a bench, and not everybody's active in the field. But the bench players really energize those others on the field with their cheering, with their encouragement. And we have to remember that all of us are either we're on a team. Whether we're quiet or we're not, even if we're outside of that, we're on the team, and we need to take part in encouraging those that are in the field, especially when they're on your team. And you don't hate on someone else or threaten on someone else just because they have a different opinion than you do. We have to respectfully be able to sit down and talk. That's one of the reasons why I appreciate you so much, David, because in every meeting, whether I'm sitting with you as a participant or I'm watching you as a leader, you always try to exude being a team player and recognizing those people or those entities as well that are in a room with you. And I think that is so true on how we can accomplish what we need to accomplish. What about the beautification? You mentioned Love Your Block, which I heard a lot about is roughly a year ago or so, and I understand even at that time that was just a start, and it was something that was very good for Shawnee to get, one of the smallest communities ever to be given one of those Bloomberg grants. But let's talk about that now, because you mentioned the sign that went up, Love Your Block. What does beautification really look like for Ward 3, in your opinion?
Yeah, in my opinion, what Ward 3 beautification looks like, it's more of a program, a long-term program that includes incentives like maybe encouraging persons to provide incentive for the best kept lawn, the most improved property or house, whatever it might be. And so we create incentives for that, whether it be a gift of a lawnmower or some paint or whatever it might be, just whatever those incentives might be. But we're talking about beautification of personal properties in terms of just the trees that needs to be trimmed and the streets edges kept, well kept, the curbs and so on. We're actually working on a plan right now to get churches in that neighborhood to adopt certain sections, maybe 3-4 blocks, and keep those curbs clean just on a weekly basis. And so we're involving our church members and people in some of those beautification aspects, but then signage and so on would involve the city like with through the Love Your Block and, you know, maybe the street, the public works and other departments and so on. So just going a little further than cleaning up the floor bed is what I'm talking about in the beautification.
And that goes into what you said recently about being a team player. It sounds like churches are coming together.
Yes.
Perhaps then utilizing the nonprofits. Well, grants wouldn't be the nonprofit, but utilizing that area and the city. It really does take everybody.
And we've had the Pogo would come at our church and other places in that community, and we've done some walkthrough looking at some built environment assessment and see what are some of the needs, and the city has been involved in that. So that's the level at which we're trying to be partners and team players, because we can't do it alone. We have to do it together. But we're trying to say, okay, we've talked about it, let's get up and let's do something. So that's where we are right now. We're in the doing stage.
I agree, 100%. And for those who have lived here a while, and even the young ones coming up, I mean, I think all of us would agree is that we're in the doing stage. Okay, so we've talked about safety and security. We've talked about being a team player. We've talked about beautification. We've talked about a little bit about economic development. Did you say everything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah. I think, you know, just business and opportunities for training. We have a lot of that going on, but we still do need some specialized training. But when we have entrepreneurs upcoming, we need not just knowing the administrative aspect of the business, but all the mechanics that go with that particular business that you're doing, and also partnering with the city and other maybe organization or agencies to assist persons in just learning the know-how in running a business and so on.
Well, and then the final one would be accessibility. And I know that you are planning something very nice for the Martin Luther King time, in which you want to widen your breadth a little bit of what can the accessibility to things like that, which it predominantly happens right there in your ward a lot of times. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, what we're doing this January, we've done in the past with the Dunbar Heights and other groups, and we're trying to be an advocate for the things that Martin Luther King represents. And so on the Saturday preceding the Martin Luther King holiday, on the Saturday, there'll be some kind of community project that we do that's in keeping with what Dr. King was advocating for, in terms of being that beloved community and being a better community and so on. So we're going to invite everybody in the community to get involved in this, and we're going to choose some area and work in that area. Maybe downtown, it may be in the south, we're not sure as yet. But then on Martin Luther King Day, not sure the time as yet, we're planning to have a panel discussion to discuss some of the issues, some of the local issues that are relevant to the things that King advocated for.
That is wonderful, and we're in the business of accessibility, and I know that you want to make that through your own efforts be able to happen, but I want you to know too that we as Shawnee CTV want to assist with that in any way that we can, help to empower you to get that done.
Right.
But also we want to reach out because we believe accessibility to our commissioners is very important, and also to city officials, certain city officials, and maybe we could get that. But whoever is appointed of the 5 applicants, no, please, you can reach out to us, and we would love to be able to talk with you about your ideas and about the 5 points that David has brought up for Ward 3. David, is there anything else that perhaps you'd like to share?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit.
Well, it's certainly it always is a joy to sit down with you.
It's great to do this,
and
Daniel. Thank you very much.
We appreciate. Well, I'm serious when I say you stick out as a proactive doer within the community. No matter what the wards are, you show up and you have a thoughtful opinion, and you also have great life experiences to be able to share with all of us. So it's a privilege for me to be able to sit with you on this Talk to People podcast episode, and that I hope that it does nothing but encourage growth within the entire community.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, my friend.